I think these players are ready to get into the game, and frankly, I am too, and I know that Twitch is. So let's take a look at what these players are bringing and how they're going to mulligan.
All right, the screen hasn't changed for me, Honorable, so I'm gonna have to hop off the car real quick. But you take the game intro, all right, buddy?
Yeah, it's frozen for me as well.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
you know, we're in the same boat. We're in this together. I was like, well, you set it up perfectly, man, and I just didn't want to slam. I didn't want to miss the alley-oop, but unfortunately, there was never a pass to begin with. All right, so guys, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna be right back in like 2 seconds, so that way we can figure out the mulligan screen here. All right, so you can pull up the screen. I think I did see it on the Twitch stream itself. It's just that we're trying to get Skype in sync with everybody.
Yep. Hey, you're
Terrors of an online broadcast. All right, cool. So we did say that we're going to take a couple of seconds to kind of sort it out, but it looks like we need a little bit longer than that. But don't worry, the stream is still happening. StrifeCro is going to still be playing right now. You're not going to miss a single beat because we have Milcast, our top guy, working on it. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, StrifeCro versus Reynad begins for WEC. Okay. What up, guys? We said one more minute, but the action is about to begin. We have the game ready, and we apologize for that hiccup, but that's just things that are naturally bound to happen when you have people across 3 different continents, basically taking on this game at the same time. So we appreciate everybody's understanding, but we're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go too. So these players have held the mulligans for a bit.
Okay.
And, yep, here we go.
All right, so we didn't miss anything whatsoever. We're going to start off with the good old Rogue versus what looks like to be the Paladin. And I'm very excited to see what his StrifeCro looks like. He came off a hot session of Hearthstone or Time with His Girlfriend. I have no idea which one it is.
Wow.
So either way, he's raring to go.
I don't even know what to say after that. Well, I mean, what can I say, I guess?
He's good at both.
Consecrations and 2 wild pyromancers in StrifeCro's hand. Meanwhile, 2 gadgets and auctioneers in Reynad's hand. So both of these players are going to be fighting for the board early on, but in a much more passive way. Both these players respond instead of using very aggressive minions to kind of take control. So Reynad is looking forward, of course, to his turn 5, where he can use an auctioneer and then follow it up with a couple of spells to refuel his hand and pick apart his opponent's board. And of course, StrifeCro, very true to StrifeCro's nature, he'll turn anything into aggression if he can.
Yeah, he's not opposed for missing value immediately and just go for that board presence, like you kind of mentioned. He was one of the guys where I just saw him plop things that just don't do anything initially at face value, right? Like he plops a Defender of Argus on an empty board, and you're just like, well, why? And then you just kind of realize how much that kind of imposes a threat based off the other cards he has in his hand, and that's how he's able to kind of combo everything. He's very big into board presence. You just kind of pick his brain. He's always talking about how board presence dominates everything in this game, especially because you think about how spells and their effectiveness, but if you kind of look at minions as a spell that does damage every single turn, then you kind of tap more into the mind of StrifeCro and why he does the decisions he does. So it's very intelligent. I love hearing about what he has to say about the game because they're always so smart, and they share some insight of how I should develop this player.
Yeah, it's something. I'm glad you touched on that because he was actually one of the first people I saw to use Sun Fury Protector, and I was a little confused that Sun Fury Protector was in there at first. But then when I just see him play Sun Fury Protector without having any minions to buff, I was sort of like, I see why this card's in here now. It serves two purposes. And that's really where I actually got my first real lesson of Hearthstone, was watching StrifeCro play and how aggressively he fights for board control. Something very unique to watch.
All right, well, Reynad, like you said, he does have this double gadget stand. He also has Assassin's Blade, which is something that's been teched in recently, and I think it's to compensate for the fact that Lotheb is most likely in this deck. You have Lotheb, you take out things like Cold Blood, and you make up for the damage with the 12 that you get from Assassin's Blade. That should be enough, assuming your opponent doesn't just continually armor up or heal out of that range. Even so, but Assassin's Blade also does help shore up those matchups as well. You're just able to bash in and really put hurt on your opponent. So Reynad does have a lot of tools. He's going to have to draw into something better, though, especially with he had this preparation. Right now, the preparation doesn't really serve much of a purpose at the moment.
Unstable Goal? That seems like a really interesting include into Paladin, considering that your hero power makes 1/1s.
Huh. That's actually a really good point. Unstable Goal completely nullifies your hero power. Huh. Interesting.
That's sort of weird to me.
It is weird, but I wouldn't put it past StrifeCro. I think you know what? It makes sense with things like Acolyte, because it helps you draw very effectively with it, and not to mention it's just like one of those things where it's annoying enough because this is, as much as it's a 1/3, the Undead Ghoul is actually a 2/3 because of the way it does its death rattle. So maybe you kind of improve your board presence. You allow it to pick apart while drawing cards, similar to how Warriors to stabilize in the early game. You have True Silver Champion to act as your pseudo Fiery War Axe. So the more I think about it, there is synergy in that department, but definitely not working with the hero power in a very cooperative manner, in my opinion.
Yeah, sort of peculiar. It's just a testament to how strong that card it actually is. It doesn't seem like that big of a change from something like... This is going to seem like a really weird reference, but like Frostwolf Grunt, for instance, is a 2-mana 2/2 taunt, and as you were saying, that Unstable Goal is sort of like a 2-mana 2/3 taunt. That's basically exactly what it is. That 1 point increase in health makes all the difference in the world with a card like that.
Huh. I wonder if Reynad would have actually attacked with the Thalnos to see if anything changed, but in the end, the consequence is about similar.
Yeah, I don't think there's a draw that changes what playing the Assassin's Blade there, because for no other reason, he just wants to develop the Assassin's Blade.
Oh, if he coins out the Sunwalker, though, Reynad's got the perfect answer. He's got Gadget Sand, he's got a Backstab, he's got Deadly Poison, and he's able to effectively deal with it while being able to draw cards. And he still hasn't even used his preparation. So there's lots of potential explosiveness coming out of Reynad in the following turns. And the Paladin does still tend to struggle sometimes with this Miracle Rogue if it gives it time to set up. If you can kind of allow it to load itself, as much as you do have those heals, those taunts to really be annoying, that's all you are. You're annoying, and you're not necessarily a threat all the time because you're able to react to the rogue, but a lot of times, how are you able to kind of kill the rogue if you're just swatting down the flies every single time?
Yep. I'm thinking you and I are thinking pretty much exactly the same way. One of the biggest things that I've noticed about Paladin is that Paladin's able to kind of put up a pretty good fight against Miracle Rogue, but when in my experience, the Miracle Rogue ends up just having an edge in the end because of how powerful Leroy and 2 Shadow Steps are. When you combine that with the idea that Miracle Rogue can now also play Lotheb, you're taking out one of your opponent's potential turns where they can use Equality Consecrate to fight against the board presence you have. Because sometimes what you do is you just conceal an Azure Drake and an SI7 agent, or an Earthen Ring Farseer with another minion, and that extra 7 damage that's concealed allows you to make one big push even if your opponent has healed up from something like Holy Light or Guardian of Kings. And this is sort of exactly what Reynad's doing now. This is just an alternative way to do it. The Assassin's Blade with a poison on it represents 15 points of damage, and that's putting a lot of pressure on StrifeCro's ability to develop his board and make a pushback himself. He's just going to have to fight defensively through it. So when he expends a lot of tools, being this defensive, it allows Reynad to kind of flex his development plan how he sees fit. If he doesn't have Auctioneer, it gives him time to find Auctioneer. And when he does have Auctioneer, it gives him time to fill up a hand that he can explode with to take back over the game once the Paladin has restabilized. So, and this is like what you're seeing come into effect. So, like just what you were talking about, he's got a perfect answer to this Sunwalker right now. He's got Auctioneer with a backstab. He's got Preparation. He's got a 5-point Assassin's Blade. He's got all the tools he needs to start making that endgame push.
I think so, and we'll find out whether or not StrifeCro's his turns end up paying out. Because I'm also kind of a little surprised how much he's been holding the True Silver Champion. Granted, he has a second one, but using it as a premium removal opportunity against things like Drakes. And also, the weapons are one of the most effective ways to kind of deal with something like Lotheb. Wow, Reynad picks up the Conceal, though, for his gadgets, and that is a very nice draw.
Yeah, this is this feels like an Eviscerate turn to me.
Yep, well, he still can do both. Why not both?
Ooh.
Well, he does have the second gadget stand as well to kind of continue off that chain. And he has hit his Leroy, which is very important, with the Shadow Step. So he's got 23 damage the following turn, assuming his gadget stand gets cleared, because you kind of just assume your opponent's able to do something with a quality, maybe.
Right. Even if gadget stand doesn't get cleared this turn, Reynad has 27 damage next turn. Leroy, 2 Shadow Steps, 4 from Auctioneer, and then 5 from the Blade. So even if StrifeCro clears this, which I imagine he's going to, he's probably going to do something like Wild Pyromancer, Coin, and Consecrate, or maybe 2 Consecrates. That's really his only options to clear this. So even through one of those, his opponent's still, Reynad still got 23 points of damage.
Yeah.
And StrifeCro can only heal with 22. It's funny that you were talking about that one attack would have kept him alive for another turn. I don't know if it makes a difference, but that one attack does end up being whether or not he can actually live for another turn or not. But again, I don't think it makes much of a difference in this game.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said that Reynad drew the exact cards he needs to kind of end the game, but at the same time, that's just kind of what Paladin allows Miracle Rogue to do. And this is what happens with the victim. It becomes the victim of playing a little too slow. As much as Paladin's really cool, and I'm a little bit regretful already that I said that StrifeCro doesn't lose with this deck, but maybe he wasn't playing many Miracle Rogues, or at least ones that get such a great start to this, where they draw exactly what they need by turn 8 to Leroy double Shadow Step and use the Assassin's Blade. So Reynad's going to start off this series 1-0, and I think that's exactly how he wants to. He's able to take out Paladin.
Looking at Reynad's face, it's like he doesn't even like winning with this deck. He's just like, oh, of course I have Leroy and 2 Shadow Steps with 5-point Assassin's Blade out. Yeah, really great game, right?
He's definitely mad at somebody right now. He's not happy.
I think he's mad at Blizzard is what he's mad at. Nobody should be able to deal that much damage on turn 8 after being able.
And find out what happens. Reynad's up 1-0, and he does still have pretty good decks to kind of follow this up upon with Warrior and the Warlock, both seeing lots of popularity.
Huh. Well, he is going with Druid. Haunted Creeper, no surprise to be seen in here. I don't think this really gives an indicator of whether or not he's token. This seems like a card that StrifeCro would just play anyway. Again, sort of his style. Oh, it is going to be token, though.
It is token, Druid.
That's a really strong curve, too.
It's about as clean as it gets, as the Jackson 5 taught me.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you rather have an Innervate hand, or would you rather have a hand like this?
Depends what I get with the Innervate. I mean, a Violet Teacher Innervate.
Let's say you can have an Innervate and 2 random cards, or you can have this hand. Which one would you choose?
I choose this hand. This hand's a lot more annoying for Miracle to deal with on a turn-to-turn basis. Versus if you just push out something really powerful, say you were playing a Yeti or a Violet Teacher, they still can just backstab. Why not
sometimes
both?
You get both, yeah.
Why not both? Push your hands together, right?
This is kind of a tough turn now. I don't even know if he uses this Innervate.
I think Argent Squire loses significant power every turn past turn 1. So I like pushing out early. It's still annoying for Rogue to deal with. They need to do 2 things to it. Not to mention that he's first.
There's the old Lotheb Miracle Rogue. Maybe it's going to rear its ugly head.
Well,
it's pretty brutal to Lotheb 2 or 3 turns in a row, I have to admit. Every time I did that, I felt so dirty. I was like, oh my gosh, my opponent cannot cast anything. This is really bad. So like they would play an Azure Drake, and then I would attack the Azure Drake with Lotheb, and then Shadow Step the Lotheb, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm healing the Lotheb and ruining their next turn of spells.
What makes it really powerful, too, is also the fact that when you Shadow Step it, it gives you room to squeeze in things like Van Cleave. Say you play Lotheb on 5. Your opponent can't respond. They just drop something. You trade. You Shadow Step. Then you put out a Van Cleef at a 6/6 because of all the cards you played. And all of a sudden, they can't deal with that. And you've compensated the 6 damage with Shadow Step immediately already. So it says that you're not losing anything. In fact, you're just building up your board presence and playing it more control style, which is very much annoying for your opponents to deal with. So Lotheb brings a lot of versatility to even the Miracle Rogue, the deck it's supposed to counter.
Yeah, it could just be another one of those oversights where you print a card that you feel like you're like, ha ha, gotcha, Miracle Rogue, and it's like, oh,
JK,
we actually got his back.
Not quite what was planned. All right, well, StrifeCro picks up combo, and he does have Innervate. So by all means, there is a way for him to end the game early. But Reynad still has ways to kind of deal with this. You just kind of have AoE, and that's the best way to clear the board against something like this.
Yeah, this is a weird spot to be in. Reynad's hand's kind of clunky, honestly. He's got a lot of efficient cards, and he's got a lot of little 2-card combos, but he's going to be taking some damage along the way. And as you said, StrifeCro's already got the combo put together. I don't think that Reynad suspects his opponent's got the combo put together with an Innervate so far. That would be a pretty tough range to imagine.
Oh, okay.
Backstab, I imagine, is very likely this turn.
Yeah, and set up for a Blade Flurry the following turn. He is kind of hesitant, so maybe he's rethinking his decision on whether or not that was the optimal play.
You attack here with the dagger? I guess you do.
Well, if you plan on Blade Flurrying, then the outcome's about the same. You just kind of hope your opponent doesn't have Power of the Wild. But then even so, you still have the Thanos. You're kind of just hoping that if for a reason he's not able to kind of put it outside of range.
That's what that attack is, by the way. It's a hedge against Power of the Wild. If StrifeCro had Power of the Wild, you're looking at a pretty bad spot for Reynad.
Yeah.
But if he attacks, he's going to be taking the damage he intends to take anyway. And when you look at his hand, if he Blade Flurries, he doesn't have any mana to do anything afterwards. So his turn is just set up to next turn Blade Flurry anyway. And so one way he loses a dagger, but it's not really that big of a deal because, again, if he gets Power of the Wild, this is an easier board to deal with than before, where it was just now you're facing down an extremely ugly board and you've taken extra damage from it.
How about this innervated Lotheb play that StrifeCro has at his fingertips?
That's what he's thinking about, for sure. I'm curious how much merit there actually is to just Savage Roaring right here.
Oh man, I didn't even consider that possibility because you always kind of put 2 and 2 together, but
right, because the Savage Roar is getting in just as much damage as it would with Force Nature right here. But if you happen to draw a second one, it makes a lot of sense to
get that 12 damage in now.
Right, but I think the Lotheb is slightly better. It just can really throw your opponent's turn off.
All right, well,
now what does Reynad do? He's on 4 mana, and the only thing he has available to him is SI7 Agent.
Yeah, and even so, the SI7 Agent isn't going to even be able to be comboed. So StrifeCro takes a very dominant approach here by using Innervate early, but Lotheb already getting work in and able to sneak in that 5 damage. Not to mention that StrifeCro still has combo and picks up a swipe, so he's got ways to kind of whittle down his opponent.
Yeah, that's a really weird draw. I guess he's just going to be pushing. He's just going to attack for 6 and then hero power. It's really tough to envision using swipe here.
Well, maybe now he uses Savage Roar.
What in the heck? Let me count this damage roll. 10 plus 3. Oh, he's actually got lethal next turn with Force of Nature plus Lotheb. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. So StrifeCro put himself in a position to win immediately. Reynad needs to top deck something like his Gadgets, and that'd be mint.
So that at least is what he was thinking about the turn before. Was he was like, Savage Roar is just as good here. Like, I still get an 8 points of damage from my Savage Roar with just these 3 minions on the board. Should I use it now and make a push for lethal? So it makes a lot of sense to do it that way, honestly. Like, look at how much pressure Reynad's under. He can't. I don't even think he can live. He's got to have a way to heal and clear everything.
Well, if he drops Lotheb, he actually does live, because assuming he doesn't know what his opponent has, but his opponent only has spells. You need to top deck something like Druid of the Claw in order to win, or even Keeper of the Grove. But even so, that's still not enough insurance. Do you go for like a Hail Mary Van Cleef play? Oh man, he's picking up the Assassin's Blade.
I think he has to try to do something to get rid of this Lotheb, and this is really the only option he has. It's just one of those unfortunate spots where, I mean, that's sort of the power that Lotheb can present against a very spell-heavy deck.
Yep. And at this stage, I guess Reynad just took the better option, saying, I hope you don't have spells to just do 3 damage, but StrifeCro does, and he evens up this series. And takes out a really important deck in the Miracle Rogue. Oh, it is the Warrior, though.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Warrior with interesting cards.
I actually, I pointed this out to myself, of all things. Sometimes you just need to think a little bit more. If his last deck is Zoo, Zoo's actually good versus both of these. So what he might be trying to do is get a little bit more information out of what these decks are before he can adopt his or adapt his mulligan choices. So he's just trying to pick up a win here with Warrior and then move forward with Zoo from there. And then he's also potentially trying to conceal his Warlock deck from other players, so that moving forward in the tournament, they know if he's playing Zoo or if he's playing Handlock.
Okay, so it's the tournament play, not necessarily just the matchup play. Okay, right. I like it. Very intelligent. Good observation. Now, StrifeCro does start off with the Haunted Creeper, but one thing that is interesting is the dynamic between Haunted Creeper and this Undead Ghoul, where it seems like this Undead Ghoul has its number. So Reynad does have these options to kind of swat down the token start, and I want to see how this kind of pans out, because the Sludge Belcher is another card that people say just fits so perfectly in what Control Warrior wants to do. And before you kind of played Azure Drake, because what else better could you do? It just naturally cycles, gives you good stats and a body and a card draw. But the Belcher, I think, is exactly up the alley of what Control Warrior wants. It makes it really difficult to get through, so that like Armor Smith... Oh, sorry, what would you want to say?
Yeah, it looks a lot like... I was going to touch on... Blizzard paid a lot of attention, it feels like, to pros when they were coming up with these Nax cards. Because one of the biggest complaints was the lack of playable 5-drops. It was just basically it was Azure Drake, or if you were playing Druid, you had Druid of the Claw. And that was it. But now in this set, we're seeing Sludge Belchers come along, Lothebs come along. You're going to see Spectral Knight coming along, the 4/6 that can't be targeted by hero powers or spells. They're printing a lot of 5-drops to give players options, and it's really changing the way that some of these decks are being played. So you're seeing a lot of old decks that were powerful come back into the fray, but at the same time, with that many 5-drops getting played, it's unlocking the potential for new strategies to come out as well.
Oh man, how tempting is it to Keeper the Grove this?
It is really tempting. It's hard. It's really hard not to. I don't think he's got an option, honestly. I think he could even like see some of the cards in his opponent's hand that he wants to keep for later, and still probably keep for the Grove now just to get the board presence.
Sure.
How hard is it to not Sludge Belcher this turn?
I think it's really difficult because everything else doesn't get anything done. Shield blocks draw you closer to something that you probably won't be able to play either way. What I love about the Belcher and the synergy is just, again, it's really annoying what the Control Warrior wants to stall for time. It fills a very important drop for the Warrior to hit. Not to mention that it also has extra synergies with, things like Armor Smith. They have to go through 2 iterations of minions rather than just 1. You have the ability to use the token as a cruel taskmaster for a trade if your opponent isn't able to deal with it immediately. So all these kinds of small things that allow the Warrior to kind of gain back in control, and what the Belcher represents is very effective for this Warrior deck.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's got all the tools you need to slow down decks. And the fact that honestly, Sludge Belcher would probably be worse if it was a 4/7 in some regards, because what happens is when it gets overkilled, the 2 health that the second taunt has makes all the difference in the world. So like it would be better in a lot of respects, but at the same time it's like sort of like a trade-off where the extra minion makes a lot more difference than just having big stats are concerned. I would prefer to have 2 minions, honestly. That's just me. But sometimes it can come back to bite you, like if a silence comes through. But it helps you if something like Black Knight comes through. It looks like he's struggling with this decision, and rightfully so. This is a pretty tough turn to deal with.
You think so? You're really worried about what his opponent can have. He's going to value this Divine Shield and just go for the Power of the Wild play afterwards. StrifeCro needs to hurry up, otherwise he's going to miss his attack. He does get it, though, right at the last second, so that was really important. You don't want to miss that 5 damage. That's way too big to be missing. He also kind of messed up the state of his game board, a little mispositioned now, but it's not that big of a deal.
All those years of StarCraft coming in handy.
Sure.
Yep, I agree with Lotheb. There's just no other play. You got to get something down, and you have to start picking apart this board. This is the perfect card to do it with because your opponent can't swipe a Wrath. So
you
outside
can't
of
trade it
minion
in
buffs.
though and put a Violet Teacher, which is 2/3/5s that Warrior has to deal with.
Now let me ask you this: when he trades it in, does he use his 2/2s or does he use his 3/5 and his 2/2? He'd be sacrificing more health if he used a 3/5 and a 2/2, but oh, we can also do it this way.
Yeah,
Violet Teachers
actually
cost
think
more.
that originally, so I was like, oh, that's a really creative way to think about it, and I was trying to think of all the possibilities. But in the end, I think this is almost superior and almost.
I thought I assumed he had 5 mana for some reason. I saw Lotheb at 5, and I was going into 5.
Totally fair assumption, and sometimes we know Lotheb pigeonholes mana anyways.
Yep.
Reynad also has another easy drop, and that's kind of what the Sludge and Lotheb represent. It just gives it more consistency in the mid game. And he already did use the Keeper, so maybe the Sylvanas can do work.
You know, he's getting low on life, though. It is something he's worried about. Because StrifeCro used Savage Roar early on. I'm curious if Reynad thinks that means he has another copy of Savage Roar.
True, true. All things that he can representing the damage.
You saw him hesitate for a moment. He doesn't really have an option other than to play Sylvanas here, though.
Uh-huh. Let's see if StrifeCro top deck something really important like a Keeper of the Grove as well. That might be able to seal it away. A Lotheb.
Oh, wow. That's going to prevent shield blocks.
Whoa. And something like Brawl, right? Brawl is a really powerful follow-up to Sylvanas, so that way you steal whatever comes out.
Yeah, this could be bad news. He's not even going to be able to execute his own Sylvanas if he draws it.
Oh no. The travesty. StrifeCro, at the same time, I realized that if he plays Lotheb, it's almost insurance that Sylvanas will get something value-wise. Like, he won't be able to kill itself otherwise. Unless he's able to use something on itself, like Cruel Taskmaster. Or like a shield slam. But that's still a little inefficient.
He's really struggling between Lotheb and Harvest Golem here. It looks like, or maybe even Big Game Hunter. I can't imagine you want to play Big Game Hunter here.
Well,
yeah,
I like what Lotheb does, yeah.
Yeah, I like Lotheb here a lot, too.
Ooh, nasty for Reynad. He picks up a slam, which isn't very helpful.
Hey, that's a perfect 7 mana, though. He's got Gore Howl here, but he's at 9 life. Like, how much more can he afford to pay?
Well, I mean, he can also use the Gore Howl to remove one of the smaller minions, and hopefully he steals another one, so taking away 3 damage effectively.
Well, he can also use the Fiery Oryx and armor up, too. So something I'm looking at is, do you Fiery Oryx the 1/1 so you can always take a better minion? So that way you never take the 1/1 from your opponent's board? Or do you Fiery Oryx like the 2/2 and then hope to steal the 3/5 or sorry, hope to steal one of the 3/5s afterwards?
I think it plays armor. Okay, the Gore Howl. I think it plays a lot into what your opponent's range is. That 1 damage does make the difference. So he's going to be going down to 7 or 8. 7 means you die to Force of Nature hero power, right? And then
he's going to be dying to big pieces of combo like that, I think, regardless.
Okay. All right, well, this is a big moment. He needs to steal one of the bigger minions, and he does. He gets the Keeper of the Grove. So that's a nice win for Reynad.
2 points of damage will end this game. That's not it. Wow, Reynad's got a big swing here with 2 shield blocks, too. He might be able to turn this game back around. And StrifeCro's got a big decision in front of him, too. Does he want to flood the board with all of these minions right now? Or does he want to continue to save this Big Game Hunter? How much value does this Big Game Hunter hold when your opponent's down to such a low amount of life and almost able to turn it back around?
I think you got to hold it, right? What if you drop something like an Alex Straza and all of a sudden bounces back and you need a way to answer it immediately?
Right.
I think holding it is the right call.
A tough one, from as far as I'm concerned. I would have taken a little bit more time to think about Deathwing!
Oh my goodness!
What on earth is going on?
Oh, Reynad's blinking slowly because he's like, careful, don't get too excited. Level.
I don't think I could put Deathwing in any of my decks anymore because when I draw it, my eyes just get huge.
That is amazing. I want to see it being played. I don't care anymore if Reynad wins or loses. He needs to play Deathwing somehow this game.
But StrifeCro's got Big Game Hunter in his hand.
Oh my god, you're so...
Oh no.
No, I mean, you obviously try to bait out first. If you would play Ysera before Deathwing, certainly against Druid. Druids have a very difficult time with it.
Ysera's not going to bait out Big Game Hunter, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my gosh. He may have to play the Deathwing at some point, too.
How do you go about this? You want to kind of utilize your Shield Slam immediately, but the mana gets a little clunky after that.
I think he's got a shield slam here. I think you want to shield slam the 3-5, and then continue to work your way down the board. Slam is just. I don't see Slam drawing a card this matchup. Like, you need to conserve a lot because you have so much power in your hand that all you have to do is get to a stable point in the game. Survive. You're gonna be winning. So like your life, every single point of life matters so much right now.
I like it. I like the idea of armoring up. I like utilizing Slam here as removal, taking out what your opponent is. He's got to hurry up though. Time's almost running out.
Yep. I like the play.
Okay.
I think this is his best way to mitigate damage, and I think that's what he should be most concerned with at the moment.
Still, Force of Nature top deck for StrifeCro to end this game early, and Reynad would not have an opportunity to play either of his big minions that's sitting in his hand at the moment. StrifeCro needs that Force of Nature right now.
Ooh. Swipe is not going to do it either.
You good?
That's a really painful one to draw right now.
And it just goes back to the point you always mention with these token druid decks where you just whiff sometimes late game because you just don't have the ability to put down reasonable threats back to back to back.
Yeah. Any druid deck can really whiff at the end game if you get to the innervate point, but token druid has the little extra amount of density that's lost between Power of the Wild and Ardent Squire that it makes all the difference in the world. Second shield block. He's at 11 now, possibly up to 13. And this Cruel Taskmaster, believe it or not, is really important for this turn.
13, you know, you can put yourself at 13 and then use the Cruel Taskmaster to remove.
This is tough, though. I mean, you do want to get more presence on the board also. Mm-hmm. So there is something to be said for the idea of, as much as you don't want to, paying a few points of life and getting this Faceless Manipulator down.
Right, because he's obviously drawing for damage points in some capacity. If he would have finished you off, he would have already by this point.
Right.
So you can kind of deduce that he's used one Savage Roar. He doesn't have Force of Nature. So what does he have? Maybe he has Dead Innervates. That makes you more comfortable to do this trade, so that way you can take out minions and improve your position. Reynad still not out of the woods just yet.
Yep.
His opponent still can draw into something really nice like Ancient of Lore and put the pressure right back on him.
This play is all about stabilizing the board. He realizes that, oh my gosh.
He's one damage
off. Oh my gosh. Do you hold this?
I think you gotta hold it. He's at 9 health. Are you afraid of an Alex Strauss? No, if you commit to the Force of Nature, though.
Alex Strauss is going to blow you out of the water regardless. Yeah. I think he's got to wait, though. Because he's got Innervate in his hand, too, so even if he draws another Force of Nature, he's still got enough to cast both of them.
That is a really good point. I think with
there's no
the more I think about it, the more I think about it, the more you're completely right. I think you have to hold it. And
there's absolutely no consideration to clearing his opponent's board here either. Even his opponent's got two health minions, but it's just StrifeCro is understanding at this point that he's got to go for the win. I think clearing here would just be it's just out of the question. I think the one thing he is thinking about is how something like, whoa, that's sort of unique. I wonder why he would do that.
Calculating damage, what can his opponent be doing over the course of the turn?
I was going to say that something that there is to take into account is if you draw Ancient of Lore, you can play Ancient of Lore and draw 2 cards, and then Innervate Swipe would be lethal afterwards.
All right, well, Reynad's going to use this opportunity to play Ysera. It's now or never, really. And Fiery Warak most likely will be following it up. So Reynad's going to try to draw.
6 points of damage.
The Ysera
awakens. Oh my gosh.
StrifeCro can still end it by drawing a Savage Roar right here, or even Drew the Claw is enough as well.
Oh my gosh!
He's got it, and that's going to end the game. And Reynad's going to drop into a 1-2 hole because his Innervate allows him to push through.
Back-to-back.
Oh, man. If he armored up in some capacity, but how can you blame him? The board was clear. There's just that one opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with Reynad's play, too. He had stabilized. These players are ready to get into their mulligans. So Reynad down to his last deck. This Warlock deck's going to have to pull out a 2-0 versus StrifeCro. He's got Druid and Hunter left. And it looks like that's a Zoo deck.
All right, and he's playing Doom Guards, which was already a card under discussion of whether or not it needs to be in it. Players like RDU didn't even include Doom Guard.
I think I would always include Doom Guard. it is tough to beat a 5-mana 5/7 charge.
He's an A-lister. You know, he's not one of these guys that just is in the deck because he can be. What makes this deck so frightening, in my opinion.
I
the fact
agree
that
with you.
Something can come out. Yeah.
Your opponent has such strong, consistent starts, and they follow it up with Doomguard. And the Doomguard, here's the thing, is they don't even have to always play it on turn 5. A lot of times on turn 5, they just further stabilize their board. So then, if you have a way to counteract that, say you have a board sweep, or if your play is to create tension on the board and hope that you can get value out of your next attack, Doomguard is what sways that the other way around. So a lot of times your opponent isn't even paying a price for having Doomguard in the deck, other than the fact that they have to take an aggressive stance, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think.
Ooh, Reynad curving out pretty poorly here. Didn't get his 1 drop, and doesn't have a visible 3. He might have to drop something like Nerubian Egg. But part of the beauty of Zoo is that you're able to kind of curve into things naturally. So most likely he'll pick up something that he can kind of pair together to make a solid turn 3. But if he picks up like a Doomguard, then, well, he's a little bit sad. He's a little sad.
Yeah, you're looking forward to the turn you can actually play Doomguard, but you don't want to get stuck with it in your hand. Abusive Sergeant is a pretty poor draw right now. Your opponent doesn't really have anything going for him. So it's going to set up for your eggs in the coming turns, but you already had Dark Iron Dwarf to do that. So this Abusive Sergeant's sort of like there's a chance it gets stuck in his hand for a little bit until he can find a good way to use it. I think oftentimes it's going to be used as a 1-mana 2/1 minion.
I think so as well. He's going to pass. It's staying in your hand effectively does the same exact thing anyways. You have the 2 damage, whether it's up front or in the back end. So
yeah,
I think paying later is fine.
There is something important to note is how important a card like Abusive Sergeant is against Druid of the Claw in taunt mode. Your opponent oftentimes will play that to try to stabilize their board, and it provides such a big swing when you can buff a 2-power minion into a 4 and then use something like one of your smaller minions or a Dark Iron Dwarf in addition to that to push through a Druid of the Claw. Because if they're playing Druid on 5, you're going into your turn 5. And you notice that Reynad has Dark Iron Dwarf, and he already has Abusive Sergeant, so that's something we could be looking forward to as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a slow start here from Reynad, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. Because of the nature of this matchup, if you can't put together a strong early aggression without Flame Imp or something, this is the kind of push you want to be making, is you want to make these really efficient mid-game plays. So outside of something like Keeper, Reynad's turns are going to be really strong. He feels uncomfortable because Keeper is in his opponent's range, but it's not there right now. So as uncomfortable as he feels, we know that it's actually pretty good for him. And I think what he's considering here is how important it is to pop this egg or keep the egg because of a card like Keeper.
Even so, sometimes if you pop the egg a little bit prematurely, you set yourself up for like a swipe play, and it's cool that you spent the time removing it. In fact, you kind of helped your opponent be able to layer in the turns accordingly. So you have to kind of be very careful about it. I do know that it's very difficult to also pick up a guaranteed double Argus value, unless it's late game where you have a lot of low drops. So it is hard to justify it. But I think Reynad's going to go for this trade instead and just take out this Harvest Golem immediately.
Yep.
It does open yourself to a Keeper, but
a lot of people think that Zoo doesn't have a lot of decisions to make. But honestly, this is where all the decisions are made, is interpreting how your opponent's played so far and what that means for the range of cards in their hand. So you have a lot of different ways where your board gets into a spot where you're fragile to a lot of different things that can happen. So the interpretation of how your opponent's played and what that means for their hand is of paramount importance. And it's a spot that you can't fall into and just be vulnerable to everything. That's what this whole game is about, is that interpretation. And these early turns for Zoo are so critical. If you get disrupted, you can fall way behind because, again, your deck has such low draw density when it hits turns 6 and 7 that if your opponent isn't low enough to shut out the game, you need to continue to crush your opponent's board. That's what all of these thought processes are. So these turns, they look like they could be really easy, and some people will happenstance spot the play that Reynad's going to make, but there's a lot more being taken into consideration than just, should I punch my opponent's minions this turn? Should I just use all these cards? Everything matters. So that's why he's thinking through every single play.
All right, well, StrifeCro now has found himself a little bit in a pickle. He does have response to it. He's got a double combo, by the way.
I don't know if that's going to be able to make a push on life totals, though. I think it's going to have to use strictly on the board.
I think Force of Nature is definitely a premium removal spell against Zoo because you're able to kind of displace the damage accordingly. The difficult thing is whether or not your opponent's going to be able to put itself out of range and make it kind of inconvenient.
Right. I think he's actually thinking about double Savage Roar here, honestly, because it's one of the poorest cards in this matchup. And if he double Savage Roars here, he'd be able to clear out both of the 4/4s.
Yeah.
And so the debate to him, I think, is just if it's more important to get down this Druid of the Claw, which I think the answer is no. Your opponent has so many strong answers to Druid of the Claw in this spot. I think that double Savage Roar is really not that bad of a play.
His follow-ups would still be pretty weak. But at the same time, the Druid of the Claw can also turn out to be really just as weak, if not weaker. So I think you're right in this respect. I think you gotta just clear the board. Like any opportunity you have an opportunity, you can clear the board against Zoo, and you have follow-up removal. I think is usually a good deal. But maybe StrifeCro sees something that we don't with a follow-up play.
Yeah, this is going to be a rough turn. Reynad's got some really strong plays here. So this plus Direwolf Alpha, I imagine.
Yeah, and get that immediate trade. I don't think positioning actually matters.
It doesn't, unless he has a Panda in his deck or something. I don't think it's going to matter much.
No.
But Dark Iron, it's good to be in the habit of having your Dark Iron Dwarf, I think, stay healthier, because that's the one that is most likely to get used. Like, say it gets sapped later on in the game. Your opponent's more likely to sap a 5/4 than they are to sap a 5/1.
Yeah.
I like going for face here as well. He's got to start pressuring his opponent. He's lost a lot of his early game pressure, having to fight for the board, and now that he's got the board, he's going to have to make sacrifices.
Yeah. Now that StrifeCro does have Lotheb, but still, he needs to kind of use his Force of Nature to kind of stabilize what is on the board. Lotheb would just be cannon fodder, essentially, to what your opponent can do.
Right.
Okay, well, Reynad definitely has to be feeling pretty decent. The Force of Nature is usually a desperation move.
That's not a bad draw right now. So now this is another tough turn. Does he want to use Life Tap, or does he want to develop all of his minions? This is
if you have Doom Guards, like before, it was kind of like a case where you can kind of argue about it as well. Especially when Doom Guard's being taken out, you can kind of make a justification for tapping almost always, just because you kind of want to play the game extended. You want to draw into those, because sometimes you get situational cards and you want to draw more ways to impact the board immediately. But when you have stuff like Doom Guard, I am definitely in favor for dumping your hand almost always.
Yep. I think the thing that's considered here is how long it takes for Egg to actually get value. The longer he waits for Egg, the less effective it becomes.
Also true. Also true.
And now another tough
value.
StrifeCro. Yeah.
How do you kind of approach this turn?
This is a really strong turn to use Force of Nature, but I think it's probably better to wait. It looks to me like Lotheb. It looks to me like Lotheb's just better right now. That's a lot of damage to be facing down, but I mean, you can't just like keep clearing your opponent's board if they're drawing 2 cards a turn, because what's going to end up happening is if he continues to have no minions and clears his opponent's board, he's going to find himself in the exact same position turn after turn. His opponent's going to put minions on the board and he has to clear them. So he has to create tension at some point. So the only reason I think he's not doing it here is because of how much damage that the Direwolf Alphas are representing. So each Direwolf Alpha he kills, it effectively is taking 4 damage off the board. So that's really the difference between attacking here and not attacking. I'm sorry, between using Lotheb here and not using Lotheb.
Plus plus the Direwolf Alpha gives a very powerful way for Zoo to trade. Well, talking about powerful turns and moves, that's a really good 2 sequence of draws to Life Tap immediately into the perfect curve and not dumping a single hand, not losing efficiency. And StrifeCro is on the ropes.
Yeah, that's bad news.
Ooh, that is a top deck for the ages.
Keeper's not going to get it done. Guy's 1 man off making all the plays he wants to make.
Really tough. Lotheb's not even that effective against this board. More often than not, they only really have Soulfire, maybe a power.
You got a Lotheb though, right? You just need a minion on the board.
I think you need something. Something is better than nothing. But his opponent has 8 damage.
He's got 9 damage.
He's got 9 damage. I can't count.
Yep. So Soulfire's not quite lethal.
Second Doom Guard. Oh, well, his own Lotheb.
It's a Lotheb of his own, which is a pretty good draw.
That is.
5/5s are just threatening right now, and that's the major difference. You know, something to note, I'm actually sort of surprised that Reynad is playing Lotheb in so many decks when he intends to play Miracle Rogue. Like, it's just that good of a minion? I think it is, but... Man. It feels a little bit weird to be playing in Zoo. I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong about that. Do you replace a Doomguard with one of those? I don't know where that fits in.
Actually, that makes sense. It makes sense. Because you don't want to mess up your curve too badly as Zoo. Yep. So I think replace maybe even running only one Doomguard. Plus, a lot of times you.
Oh, that also prevents you from getting the dreaded double Doomguard early draws.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You get both of them. They're kind of dead. And plus, that allows you to kind of play around the cards. Say if you have a Doomguard, you don't have to worry about drawing the second one as well. So, yeah. So StrifeCro picks up the Black Knight. The Dark Knight is a very different thing. Equally as epic, though.
You know, if he didn't have Lotheb here, and StrifeCro had Innervate, would that have won the game?
Double Savage Roar would have put 12 damage on the board, plus the 6.
18. Yeah, if he didn't have Lotheb and he drew Innervate.
Oh man, that would have been crazy. What a way to surprise
me. Yeah, well, look at that. Lotheb potentially saved him from losing.
Well, that was Reynad only needs 1 damage.
Yep.
And he's going to do it with the egg. And Reynad's still in this series. We're going to game number 5.
Wow. Zoo is doing what Zoo does. And
and find out what happens in the conclusion of this series. As we're about to discover what kind of hunter that StrifeCro is playing. He is playing a Kodo, so it is a mid-range.
Yeah, I'm still sort of curious what's going to be coming out of this deck. It's definitely a mid-range-ish deck. Like I think it's hard to play an all-out aggro deck right now, especially with Nerubian Egg being a card, because the aggro deck relies so much on traps to be pushing through its damage that when you get into a race against a Nerubian Egg, that's not the kind of race you want to be in. Because your opponent your card activates your opponent's Nerubian Egg. That's not the deal you want to be in.
Timberwolf is also a card that does improve the Zoo matchup a lot, assuming you draw into Unleash the Hounds. Oftentimes, Unleash the Hounds is the draw mechanic, and it's rare that you're able to kind of get for like a full board clear. Even you get to use like Hunter's Mark on things optimal, like a Voidwalker to burst through. But Timberwolf allows you to push through that extra damage, so another important card for StrifeCro. And he also has Houndmaster, which is a nice way to kind of stabilize the board. So StrifeCro curving out pretty well here.
Yeah, I would really be surprised if he doesn't attack this Haunted Creeper. King Muckla even in his hand.
Oh,
King Muckla you don't give a
bananas. Well, he gives 2 bananas. So you can't say he doesn't give bananas.
He doesn't give us something that rhymes with Muckla. Anyways, right? This is going to be an animal companion for sure.
Oh, man.
Huffer, I don't think is a bad one. Misha, I think Misha's his most dangerous one, honestly, because it makes him vulnerable to every buff spell, and it also makes him vulnerable to Soulfire. So not what he wanted to see, I don't think.
Definitely not. And he does have a way to easily deal with it with something like the Direwolf Alpha, maybe even a Jungle. The Juggle might be really good as well. But Muckla also gets lots of value early on if you're able to kind of clear your opponent's board and make it very dangerous.
I think he's going to go for a Juggle here, honestly. I think this is a... No, I don't know, because he doesn't want to play into... he doesn't really want to play into Unleash the Hounds. This is kind of a tough turn.
Well, you still have 1 turn before Unleash the Hounds. So you can take this opportunity to build the board now. It is a bit of a tough call. But I want to see where this Juggle lands first.
Oh, this is huge.
Nice. It hits a really important target.
Yep. I'd like to see the attack with the Voidwalker for... Actually, I think you just attack your opponent's face.
Yeah, there's no beast energy, so what are you really worried about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I just remembered that. I was like, wait a minute, these aren't beasts. I'm so used to everything in this deck being a beast when it's on the board. Ooh, I don't like using the shield, though.
Make yourself a little bit more resilient to... No, explosive trap's about the same. I think the thought is that you only need 1 dog to push through the Divine Shield versus you might need 2 dogs to push through the Voidwalker.
Okay, that's fair enough. This is a really brutal turn. Wow. You're just going to have to play Houndmaster with nothing.
Oh, man, that stinks.
Yeah.
Stings like a sludge belcher.
This is why this matchup is so hard for
Soulfire. Oh
my gosh.
That is brutal.
Yeah, and that's a big board.
He almost didn't even have to use Soulfire.
Yeah, he wanted to juggle and then use this 2-1 afterwards. Is he still considering using a minion here?
Well, I guess you hedge your bets immediately against something like Explosive Trap or even Unleash the Hounds, right? You want to trade in. Don't let him get value off Unleash the Hounds immediately.
Yeah, it definitely matters. You have to kill this guy somehow. And it's a matter of just how you do it. And I like the Soulfire. Just make a big push for damage. Your opponent's in such a bad position as it is.
StrifeCro does have the buzzard, though.
Yep, he needs Unleash. And Unleash being 3 mana really hurts now.
Yeah. Difficult position. I mean, the Kodo is great to get the value, but you have a Mukla staring right back at you.
Yeah. That
It's got 11,
trade back.
13, 14 damage.
Wow. I don't know if there's any way that StrifeCro legitimately gets out of this game without an Unleash draw.
Yeah, that was a really big one. I mean, tracking might be able to pair it for the following turn, and you have it for Timberwolf, Buzzard, and the Unleash. But is that too late? Is that too late?
I think you got to play Kodo. Oh my gosh.
That is so hard. I think I like the Kodo because then you still can tracking into Unleash the following turn, and you still might be able to draw some magic.
And the Kodo can at least soak up at 6 points of damage here. Like, it'll kill one of his minions, then it likely gets attacked by a Mukla, too.
Oh, it was one card off.
Pounds. Wow.
That hurts. Whoa. Oh, my God. I guess he's going to use his Timberwolf now to clear.
I don't know if he can't use Timberwolf. I think he... Oh, he's just going to use it now. Okay.
Yeah. Immediately try to get the value clear. Okay. Deal with whatever he can. But this has been a disaster, at least for StrifeCro, in terms of the immediately he didn't have an opportunity, but that Unleash the Hounds was still really clutch. But imagine if he was able to pull it off a little bit earlier.
Wow, he's actually going to be able to climb back into this game because of Houndmaster next turn. If Reynad needs to attack this Timberwolf, or it's going to potentially see 5 points of damage out of the Mukla. Oh, he's going to go straight for the dome. This game just got really crazy.
Even so, if he Houndmasters this turn, if he Houndmasters, he still can kind of push through. So he's not out of the woods just yet, but he still made it a little bit more.
Oh my gosh, look at this. He's going to double Banana and take out the Dark Iron Dwarf. Oh, this is really bad for Reynad. That is a terrible spot to be in.
Oh, I forgot about the bananas.
And just what you were talking about, that Timberwolf is making the difference in winning or losing this game.
Oh, man. I completely forgot about the bananas. You're right. That is devastating.
Oh, that Dark Iron Dwarf basically tricked him into attacking his opponent's face instead of attacking the Timberwolf.
Well, now StrifeCro might be able to pull back right here with because he can continue to stabilize. He has cards like Savannah Highmane. He has things like Eagle Hornbow to also pressure, but I think you don't want to drop your health too low. The Kodo is also going to potentially be back-breaking as well.
Yep. I agree with this play, too. You're so far ahead in terms of development potential that there's no reason to sort of...
oh, my God. The Kodo...
He's got to play his minions, right? How else does he win? He's just got to go for it, I think.
Yeah, it's too optimistic to assume that you're going to be able to get anything else out of this. Man, that Unleash and Timberwolf was the answer for StrifeCro. And now let's see what he draws with the Animal Companion.
Wow, and this Kodo's actually able to take out the Direwolf Alpha every time.
Yeah.
Because it's buffing both of the Abusive Sergeants.
Oh, that is really devastating once more for Reynad. And he's got to deal with 3/5 minion, not to mention that the bow can kind of be a good follow-up. Yep. StrifeCro can play this super safe, though.
I think he's going to Companion first, which I agree with. I like Companioning here. If you get something like a Misha, yep. Oh my gosh. That is just so important right now. Wow, he's actually going to go for the minion, too. I'm really surprised by that. 14, and then he could have 9 the next turn. I think he actually... That was a pretty big mistake, I think, because if he just goes for face... Oh, his opponent's going to life tap anyway. So, this is just 18 points of damage now, right? 10, 13, 16, 18. Yeah, that's game. I can't believe that StrifeCro turned this game around.
Wow, what a way to swing the game in his favor. And I'm just kind of sitting here in awe of what just happened because it looked like he was dead.
I thought for sure he was losing that game. And he
very managed to come back.
Out.
And Reynad falls 2-3. StrifeCro moves on to the next round to face off Firebat. And a very